No one knows what the future holds, but if a new house is in your future, I can help from a safe distance. I'm Nick Acosta, your downtown expert, and I'm hosting safe and sanitary open houses. Nothing is different except for temperature checks at the door and masks are required. But it still smells like there are fresh baked cookies in the oven. So come on by one of my safe and sanitary open houses, and I'll say welcome home from 6 feet away.
This is Home to All, an all-inclusive real estate podcast with your host, Nicholas Acosta. Nick sits down with guests to talk about real estate and how it works. Reach him at downtown.expert on Facebook and Instagram, or his website, www.downtown.expert, or call or text him at 407-508-8809. Enjoy the episode.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. This is Nicholas Acosta, your host of the podcast Home to All-Inclusive Real Estate Podcast, coming to you from St. Pete, Florida. Mike with Blanchard Insurance. Mike, how's it going over there, sir?
Good. How you doing, Nick?
Doing well. Welcome to. It's been a while, but it's there's justice for a while. It's been a while, and we'll talk about that and related to a mold claim of mine that I'm going through. How do you guys deal with that over there at Blanchard Insurance, or what do you recommend to your customers when they buy insurance policy?
Well, good question. And I know we've talked about this off camera, and we were kind of, since we're involved with the claim that you have going on now with your new home. And I've always said, and you've heard me say this, that second to fire, water is almost just as bad. And it doesn't matter if it's a small water claim, a large water claim. It doesn't matter if it's a residential property, a single family home, a condo, a townhome, a commercial property. It does not discriminate. And there's a couple of factors that really play into that. Number one is most water claims actually are kind of slow drips. They happen over time. Nobody really knows about it, especially when it comes to commercial properties, and I'll get into a few examples in just a second. But there a lot of times it's slow, and a lot of times people don't figure out what's going on. Sometimes for 24 hours, even a couple of weeks, even a month or a couple months at a time. So that's a huge factor. Number two, the humidity in Florida keeps things naturally wet, even though we have some of the best HVAC systems down here in Florida to stay cool during the summer. We are the most humid state, and water does not dry up. Water sits. And number three, people do not realize that the inside of your home, and you're going to attest to this, is like a sponge. It soaks up water. It's not the masonry on the outside. It's not the siding of your house. Everybody's got drywall inside. They have laminate floors. They have, even though they're water resistant, water gets underneath them, buckles them up. But your home is a sponge, and you can literally lay water on a floor, about an inch of water, and within 24 hours, it's soaked up all the way to your ceiling. To give you and when I was talking about that slow drip, a couple of examples of where we've seen that, I've seen that especially on commercial property, is one time one of the worst claims we had was a building that we insure and we help out. I kind of managed the insurance on, and we had a water fountain that had been leaking over a period of a weekend, and it probably cost in excess of about $25,000 worth of damage just to the area where it leaked. And it had leaked actually down to the first story. It's a 3-story building, leaked down to the first story. And I mean, the ceiling was caved in by the time we came in on Monday morning to a doctor's office on the first floor. So that gives you an idea of how much water can come out over a period of time. And we've seen that on condo. Generally, you see a lot of that involving in like condos, like say, for example, you have a investment condo at the beach or a secondary residence, and you don't use it all the time, and you come out, let's say a month later, and your next door neighbor is not using his, and his toilet backs up and starts flooding down to your unit. And guess what? You walk in on a Friday evening, saying this is going to be a beach weekend, and you're having to deal with that. So that's, from our perspective of what we see a lot from. And like I said, I mean, it's as bad as any kitchen fire that we see. Water damage is right up there.
Oh no, I completely agree with that. I'm going to show you everybody that's watching today an example of what my house looked like for a while and what it looks like currently today. So I'm pulling this up. So it started off. Anybody you guys are listening and watching, there was bubbling that came to the surface on the drywall in the primary bathroom. First, I thought it possibly was a roof leak, maybe around the flashing. I had the roofer check it out. Not a leak there because they tested it. And then it turned out to be, like you were saying, Mike, it was a copper pipe that had been sweating for a very long time, in addition to the heat from the sun hitting the blocks. And this is what the bathroom looks like today. And you can see the pipes there, the copper pipes. And they said it was the hot water pipe that was sweating. And it was actually, so the pipe is over there to the right side on the wall there, the copper pipe. But the moisture was spreading, basically spreading around almost 50% of my house is where it went. It traveled, is what it did. And it was almost like you're saying how, water is just as bad as fire sometimes. That, I mean, the way the mold was spreading, it was almost like it was a fire, but except every time the restoration company would remove a baseboard, they kept finding more evidence of it. And we went all the way to our laundry room is where we ended up. And that was actually, there was two sources that were spreading towards each other in the house. And like you just said, we're in Florida. We do, right? Mold in trees, like oak trees, all the time because it's humid. And if we can get it on the trees outside, it's even more likely that it could happen inside your walls. Because if a tree can have it outdoors, then definitely our block walls between the drywall and cement could generate mold growth as well from the humidity. So
yeah, and actually, I mean, taking a look at this photo right here, if you actually probably did a lot better than you would have if you had a frame home. Concrete, you can scrub down, you can wash it, you can bleach it, get rid of the mold. But let's say, for instance, that wall right there, or your entire house is wood framing. Usually when we see water claims that involve, this magnitude with the mold, then you're scrubbing down, the 2x4s, you're scrubbing down the trusses, you're scrubbing down everything else. The framing of the house gets black mold on it and gets everything else. So then sometimes it's so bad over long periods of time that the reconstruction companies, the renovation companies have to come in and actually cut out some of the framing in your house because the wood has just been compromised so much. So if you can imagine, what you're going through, think of how it would have been if you would have had some type of frame style home. And, that's very synonymous with older homes. You live out near the beach where a lot of the homes, even some of the older homes, are built with concrete. But when you're talking about, an old home in, let's say, downtown Sanford, one of those old historical homes, or downtown Thornton Park or College Park, imagine that. And then it's just like you're actually ripping off the side of the house at that point in time.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. And the house I had before years ago was a bungalow from the 1920s. That was all frame. And I can see what you're saying. They had a very tedious task to take care of a house that was made out of block. I can only imagine, couldn't even imagine what it would be like for all frame construction. And they had a hard time drying out concrete, let alone somebody that has a frame house.
Yeah, and absolutely. And then you get into some of those older homes that have original hardwood floors. It's not laminate, it's not tile, and
right.
Those get damaged, and that's a huge nightmare in itself. And as you can see, this is why a lot of insurance companies, unless your home is built within the last 30 years, where a lot of insurance companies have gotten to the point of they offer limited water damage on insurance policies because it's so frequent that this happens, and people don't understand that this actually happens a lot more than they think. Besides a hurricane coming through and knocking everybody's roof off and damaging, some of the shingles on people's roofs. We see water claim our number one claim.
Bear with us, guys.
It happens, like I said, it does not discriminate. It happens in condos just as much as it happens in single family residences. And it's always bad. I would say our average water claim, statistically, we hear numbers of about $7,500, but I will say our average water claim dollars on average all the time. We've had it, and usually it occurs, strangely enough, it occurs when a new homeowner buys a home, and it occurs within the first 6 months of them owning the home. We've actually had a client, I remember years ago, up in Jacksonville, where literally she bought the home. She was due to move in about 2 days, and by the time she got the keys, within those 2 days, she had a massive toilet busted open and water spraying everywhere, a couple inches of water inside, a lot of the home. And it was probably like about a $30,000 claim. And like I said, it's just, I know you're going through this after purchasing this home within the last couple months, and it always seems to happen that way. And you don't really know. I mean, you can hire the best home inspector, the best plumbers in the world, but anything short of tearing apart a home, you could be buying into something that you don't know about. We've seen it on shower pans. We've seen major problems there. Bathrooms always a big issue. When it comes to shower pans, not putting proper green walls, behind the tile. We've seen moisture barriers. We've seen that all the time. And like I said, and it's not only the restoration, it's the dry out period. And I know you had those fans and had those dehumidifiers in there and trying to get the moisture level down to a reasonable amount. But it's not just financially costly to the homeowner, it's the inconvenience. Because guess what? Those dehumidifiers and those fans blowing 24 hours a day, it impedes your life. It's loud, it's noisy, it's not fun for everybody. Nobody wants to go through it.
No, most definitely. It started off as having that dryer that you guys see in the picture right here in our primary bathroom for a few days or maybe a week. And then they would come out and this is before we knew of the sweating pipe in the wall because we were not sure where it came from. So at first what happened was they basically said that the moisture reading in the wall was still 100% after 1 week of that machine running. So then that's when we had to get a leak detection company out here. And the leak detection company, they found that the pipe was sweating behind the wall. And he actually said it probably has been several months to almost maybe several to 6 months already that pipe has been sweating in that wall. And it takes its time to show on the surface like it did. And,
yeah, absolutely.
And I'm glad also they said that, listening out, if you guys see a sign like this, if it happens, it's hard to predict it or hard to get a sign. Not always you're going to get a sign like I did. But if you do, bring it to somebody's attention, have it looked into, because like I said, the mold had traveled 50% of the house. And we were even talking about possibly, I know this is a stretch, but I kept getting bad news from the restoration company about the mold spread, that we were even talking about the possibility of a total loss because 50% of the house was consumed by it. And if it had crossed over to the rest of my house, to the other side where we're currently sleeping in and my office is, our bedroom is in my office now because that whole side, as you guys can see in the pictures, is not what it used to be because of the damage. Bring it to somebody's attention if you think that you're having, don't be paranoid about it, but also just be, cautious and proactive. Because look what happened here. I said I smell a mustiness underneath the cabinet, and now about 50% of the walls are ripped open in the house. So
yeah,
there you go.
Great point when you're talking about new home buyers going out there and looking at a home. If you see something that you're not sure of, guess what? I mean, property inspectors, I mean, in Florida, they're only legally responsible for the cost of the inspection. So it's not like a homeowner can go back after them and sue them for the transaction on the house. You can't go sue them for $250,000, $500,000 or what, or even $1 million home. You can't hold them liable for anything beyond the cost of the inspection itself. Unfortunately, because I've been through this, a very similar situation to Nick's. And so when you see something, you need to be present if you can at all possible with the inspector. And if you see something that he's not picking out or a question, you need to question these things. Because, I mean, especially with copper pipes in Florida, because this, again, it happens all the time. And in regards to what insurance policies cover the damage that the water causes. They're not going to come in and repipe your home. They're not going to even pay for a plumber to fix the pipe. They'll pay for things like water detection services, remediation, putting fans and dehumidifiers in there to clean up the mess. But they're not responsible for the actual defective piping in the house. That's considered a maintenance issue. Same thing with a roof. If your roof is old, you're actually supposed to replace it. Insurance is not a warranty program. But as you can see, like I said, this is a big issue. And what we've seen over the years is, a lot of this real estate that's being bought up, not necessarily right now, but I want to go back probably the last 5 years. A lot of these houses that have been flipped where the investor has come in and, put in new flooring, redone the kitchen and whatnot, and is flipping the house a year later or even months later and, increasing by $100,000. A lot of the work we're seeing that has been done is very aesthetic. It looks great from the outsider's perspective, new floors, new paint, coats of paint, but really how much work did they do into the systems of the house? Were they going behind the walls? Did they put up new drywall? Of course not. I mean, they're in it to make money. So when you're ever buying these houses that, have not been lived in over a year, stuff like this happens. And you really have to pay close attention when going in and getting a house, and having a realtor like Nick, bring up these questions for you and find out, because the last thing you want to do is move into a home and have to go through this. That is not a joyous experience. We've seen a lot of homeowners buy into a home and then 6 months later, they're like, I can't believe this is happening to me. Last thing I want to do is buy this home. Well, guess what? Again, you can't go back and sue the home inspector. You're not going to get anything. It's hard to... It's not like a lemon law in Florida, where you can just, your car is defective and going to turn it in. Going through the transaction of reversing that home transaction, from what I have heard from some of the best title attorneys in the business, is it's a lot of money and it's a lot of pain and hardship. And you don't want to have to go through that. You don't want to have to, let's say you bought a home for $200,000. Now you get another $50,000 in attorney's fees because you're trying to reverse this transaction. Going even on newer construction, going after builders and going after deep pockets like that, it's hard to do. And guess what? A lot of the times you see this, especially in these investor-owned properties, what they can do is they can subrogate and send you after these contractors, these subcontractors who worked on all these policies. And generally, bigger builders will actually do that. They'll say, okay, well, we're not responsible. It's the subcontractor. So go after and find all them. Here's their deck pages for their insurance, even if they're still in business. A lot of these subs, as you know, unfortunately, might not even have insurance, might have already left the state, could declare bankruptcy. You hear this all the time. So again, prevention in these cases is the best thing any homeowner can do, because after you go through it and continue to go through it, it's quality of life. It's not only the financial toll. That's what insurance is for, but it's your quality of life that you can't get back.
No, completely agree. And on that note too, especially, so as you know, Mike, that we've entered the Downtown Expert Realties into the realm of property management, which we're hopefully getting our first lease signed for a year on one of them. I guess that's a good point to bring up here too, that when you go into a property that you're going to list, whether it's for sale or checking these things out, kind of be preventative, or because if, for instance, in my case, unfortunately, when I did do the inspection of the house, like Mike said, nobody rips the walls open, because then the homeowner that owns the house expects you to pay for it to put the walls back. And that's an expense. And they're going to say, no, we're not letting you rip your walls up because we don't have a guarantee you're buying the house. So that's one thing. But also, honestly, though, when I did walk through this house a couple times, there wasn't any smell of mold. Now, I did mention that we had that one, nail that went through the pipe on the lower level of the wall. And there was no, but that I thought that was the extent of it and that it was just going to be contained to the bathroom. But then, like I said, when the restoration company came in and started pulling baseboards off, they found more evidence that traced all the way to the laundry room. And this is like some important things to talk about in terms of property management. Well, because my house, everybody, I don't know if anyone thinks this is that this is not like a tent or, like the movie E.T. where your house is quarantined, right? So basically 50% of our house was quarantined, which, as you can see today in this picture, that they've already taken it down, but they've sanitized and they had a hygienist in here. They did an air quality test, which passed. And it was a lot to get to where you see in this picture right now let's go from real quick from here to here was about a little over a month for that transition. Not like a week or a couple days or overnight. It was like about a month or more that we've been dealing with this. It's fun to see the little bit of normalcy come back to us. So, it's all good.
Yeah, and I mean, like you said, I mean, getting that air quality back, getting everything dried out. Usually, the water claims we see, even the small ones, it's at least a week. It's at least 5 to 7 days, if not more. One of the major ones that I experienced on my own in one of my own homes was we had a problem that lasted 6 months. And I mean, we were talking, it's frame construction, so we had to cut out, framing in the house and everything, re-stucco and everything. And that was just, but again, it was just water. And it still baffles me too. And I know you carry flood insurance, but it still baffles me that people don't even carry flood insurance. And I'm like, imagine what a flood could do. I mean, we're talking about a slow leak. So imagine, what kind of experience a flood is. And, and talking about, again, launching into property management, most of the things we hear from property managers are in regards to insurance claims. And it's very important that if, whether, you work with Nick or you work with another property manager, always vet them and make sure they have good vendors that they work with, whether it's somebody like me on the insurance side or whether it's somebody like JT Restoration. Make sure they have those contacts, because the last thing you want to be doing is, and I noticed this too, I kind of picked this up through who was it? Hurricane Irma, that afterward, of course, we were getting an onslaught of claims, but sometimes they were from property managers, and we have a lot of foreign investors, and it was kind of the property manager was, putting it off on the homeowner who's over in Europe saying, hey, well, go find a vendor to clean your house, or go find a JT Restoration, go find a Miton Seneca Blanchard Insurance, go find those people, blah, blah, blah. And I was kind of like, well, why isn't this property manager why don't they have the vendors that they go to? So it's very important that you use people like Nick who have vetted and have these vendors on hand 24/7. So when these issues, as a property owner, when these issues do pop up, they can be mitigated. Because again, if the problem goes unseen and untouched for a greater period of time, you're talking about, that damage could become $1,000 all the way up to $100,000 really quick the longer the water sits. And again, circling back around, I can't say it enough. It's like, it's as bad as fire. It is bad as fire.
It definitely spreads like fire, the mold, for sure. It was getting, like I said, everybody listening, and I know you know this, Mike, the nerve-wracking, because every hour, the restoration company was calling me saying, oh, by the way, I think we suspect there's mold behind your stove. Oh, by the way, in your dining room, your living room. Oh, your other bedrooms, your second bathroom. We have to go check all the baseboards. But it was getting to the point where we were literally at the point where, the craziness of this whole thing made us go to stay in a hotel. I had a show listing in Orlando anyhow, so that wasn't a big deal. But we literally stayed in a hotel for a night because I literally had to get away from the situation for 24 hours and come back and reevaluate the situation, because I'm going from hey, it's just your master bathroom that has a problem. Your main bathroom has a problem. 2, oh, by the way, you can't sleep in your bedroom anymore. Oh, by the way, you can't be in your living room. By the way, you can't be in your dining room. And then getting a call with an unknown saying, we have to check the rest of the house. If there is no problems on the rest of the house, you guys can stay at the house. If there is, you're going to have to figure out other living situations for the time being until we evaluate this. Basically, having to rip the drywall out for 100% of the house was what we were possibly looking at one point, because they weren't sure of how far it spread, because they said it had been in the wall. The moisture had been in the wall so long that they were afraid that it spread in the entire house. Like you're talking about how it could be up to $100,000 or more in damages for this house.
Yeah, and like I said, I mean, it's gotten so bad in Florida. Like we even see it on hot water heaters. I mean, most insurance companies now are kind of like, hey, if the hot water heater, which is a major claim, I mean, it got so bad to a point where one insurance company was actually on new homeowners, when it's incentivizing the homeowner, they were like, here's $500, go get a new hot water heater, because we're going to have a claim statistically within the next 3 years that's going to be $20,000. So it makes more sense for us to give you $500 now as opposed to $20,000 down the road. So There's a lot of that, but it's gone literally. I mean, when you get into like water backup and sewer coverage, that's why they limit it to $5,000 in pretty much on any insurance policy now. You're seeing more limited water damage. Everybody needs to check their policy and make sure you have never go without water damage. I don't care if it's limited. I don't care. Never exclude it, because stuff like this will happen, and it's a pain in the ass. And again, a lot of the insurance companies, it's gotten so bad. I mean, you have obviously, your 2% hurricane deductibles here in Florida. What I probably see coming down the pipe, unfortunately, is probably going to be a separate higher water deductibles. I mean, they used to have that in the past where it's like, your standard deductible is $1,000, your hurricane was 2%. And then some companies said, well, your water deductible's got to be $5,000 because it's gotten so bad. And a lot of the plumbing in Florida, in a lot of these houses, still copper pipes. I know you see the lawsuits involving cast iron pipes, which is not really that common, but it's more copper pipes. So when looking for houses and whatnot, you got to really look at these things. A hot water heater, how good does the toilet look? Unless you're going to move in and renovate immediately, I mean, you're really susceptible, to these things, and it's the nature, of the biz. And as you can see, I mean, and the most important thing is to get on it immediately. I mean, as soon as, Nick was telling me about this, I was like, let's get a restoration company in there immediately. Even if I have to call the owner of the company, I'm going to get somebody out there. Let's get this assessed. I know it's a pain in the ass. Let's get the blowers in there, the dehumidifiers. Let's get the moisture meters in there and start mitigating this as soon as possible. And I mean, when you have water at 100%, and I mean, these guys are going through with infrared cameras. They're looking at every inch of this house and taking moisture readings. And in Florida, I mean, you want to be below, from what I've studied, is about 9%. 9% humidity is kind of like standard. And usually what they compare everything to is kind of that 9% standard on water. You want to be below 9% humidity, because all homes in Florida are going to have some rate of humidity anyways. And then getting the mold down is especially important. And how they really test that is they test the air quality outside and compare it with what is inside your house. And as soon as they kind of balance those out, you're good. But even things like, like I said, we see a lot of mold and moisture issues with air conditioners. We see it in, HVAC, ducts. Always check things like this when moving into a home, because, again, I'm not trying to laugh here, but you don't want to go through it. And I can definitely empathize with Nick after going through about $100,000 claim of my own. So,
no, it's definitely a learning experience. But if anything, the silver lining in all of this is that I'm even more aware of what the process of restoration is like with JT Restoration, as well as the insurance experience, and also how inconvenienced we had to be in the house. So now I'll be able to pass this experience on to my whether my property management clients when I manage their homes, or even the buyers I work with, even sellers when they go to buy, looking. This is what to look for. When you walk into a home, we live in Florida. If you smell like a musty smell, don't be afraid to question it. because maybe there's a slow sweating pipe behind the wall lurking, and
Yeah.
you get on it right away. So not saying that you would request to rip the wall open up during the inspection period, but if you do move forward with the house and you buy it, I would have it looked into right away with like a leak detection company, which those people at leak detection companies, I don't know. To me, that they're like God, because when they come in there with their equipment to find a leak, I'm just impressed by what they do to find a leak. I would never know how to find a leak without. Well, we don't have the equipment. Number one, we don't have. That's not my skill set, but it's a godsend to me when they can find a leak like that. And he's like, yeah, right there, hot water pipe sweating in the wall. Is what they say.
Yeah, and again, you're hit the nail right on the head there. We were talking about, an ounce of prevention goes a long ways, and have your home inspector, if he's not going around with an infrared camera and checking the drywalls to check for moisture, require that he does it. If he won't do it, go out and get a remediation company, even if you got to spend a couple $100 to have them come out and take moisture readings, especially where you think there could be an issue, and they will find it. I mean, it's not that hard to find. If you think there's a possible leak in the house, hire a leak detection company, negotiate with the seller, whatever, get them to do it, because again, an ounce of prevention is going to go a long way in these cases. And I always recommend they have new leak automatic detection systems like you can have installed in your house. It's not so big in Florida. There's still really, because a lot of the companies that are offering it don't even sell homeowners insurance in Florida. But I know, for example, like Safeco in other states where they would even write homeowners insurance, they were giving up to like huge discounts on having these systems installed in your house and actually paying for part of it. So for example, just like an alarm system, like they're going to say, well, we're going to pay 50% of the cost to have this installed because we know it's going to cut down. So a lot of these systems that they're coming out, whether through Moen or through other companies, they're huge lifesavers, because what they can actually do is shut off the water in your house once they detect a leak and send an alert directly to your cell phone. So it's, again, the technology is finally catching up with that. But again, with copper pipes in Florida, with lightning, and everybody knows that, that's, just, it's a matter of time. And statistically, on any home that has copper pipes or any home that, like, let's say is built pre-2000, we expect there to be a water damage claim at some point in time. It's just a matter of time. It could be 5 years, 10 years, 3 years, 6 months. It happens. So be prepared for it.
Completely agree. All right, Mike. So we're all good. Wrapping up here for the episode today. So, Mike, just want to say, what positive thing or what do you want to share? It could be about water claims and things like that, because this is important. This is definitely, like I said to you and everybody, that it's opening my eyes. I'm going to definitely look at that leak detection technology. I'm not saying I'm going to buy that or anything like that right now, but I'm curious about it. But that when you guys out there, real estate professionals, when you take your clients out to see houses, add this to your checklist of mindful things to be aware of when they go through the inspection process. But if you smell a mustiness like I did under my cabinet, I would say question it. Definitely question it, because what we thought was limited to just behind the cabinet turned out to be 50% of my house. So
yeah, and I mean, a couple points to add on, on a positive note is, companies, there is a difference in different restoration and remediation companies. There are your Surf Pros of the world, and then your JT Restorations of the world. Well, companies like JT Restoration actually work. They are preferred vendors of insurance companies, especially like Nick's insurance companies. Those are the vendors you want to go through, because they are vetted by these insurance companies, not to overcharge, not to inflate. The insurance companies keep them in check. They have a good working relationship with these insurance companies. So, there's no argument going back and forth, like somebody whispering in Nick's ear going like, hey, they're not paying you enough money. And, the adjuster arguing on the other side. That's very important to look for, whether you're working with a realtor, property manager, or even an insurance company. Ask them who the preferred water vendors are, because those are going to save time, save money, and save everybody aggravation. That's one thing. It's also good to have if you have investment properties, have a great property manager like Nick, because like I said, we see these claims all the time. And a lot of the time it's between tenants. And a lot of the things with the property managers we work with are in regards to insurance claims all the time. And also ask questions. If you have an insurance agent like ourselves who's actually working on your new home closing, send an inspection report to us. We have people here who have been in the real estate world. They're all insurance agents now, but some of them have been in mortgage, title, real estate, property management. We even have a guy who still has a general contractor's license on file. We can take a look at these inspections, and you got to remember, we're insuring thousands upon thousands of these homes per year. So we can take a look at it and say, hey, you know what, Nick, I saw a very similar situation on another house. Here's a couple red flags, just ask some questions. Or I can even reach out to somebody like JT Restoration and say, hey guys, Joe Taylor, can you take a look at this and let me know your thoughts on this? Is there something we can negotiate with the seller? Is it something, maybe they shouldn't even buy this house in the first place? So again, asking questions, and again, going back to that, everybody gets wowed by the aesthetic. They walk into an open home where 30 people are standing in line outside and take a look at it and go, it looks great. It looks like something that's on HGTV, but just don't get blinded by that. Do your research, check I know you can't check behind the walls, do your inspections properly, and ask questions most importantly.
Most definitely. Not just the only focus. There's many focuses when we get a report back. But definitely question it, especially if your inspector gets a very high reading of moisture in the walls, then that might be a red flag for you to be checked. I know when they did inspect mine, that wasn't the case. But like Joe Taylor Restoration and my plumbing company said that this just started happening. So it probably started happening right when I bought the house, the sweating, and there was nothing they could detect in advance. But if you do get an inspection and they have high readings of moisture in the walls, then you should definitely go one further step and maybe hire Joe Taylor to come out with their infrared cameras or get a leak detection company to verify there's not a leak in the wall. Because if you're reading 100%, more than likely there's water trickling inside the drywall.
Oh, yeah. Like, again, that number is always your humidity and moisture readings need to be below 9% every time. If it's anything above that, you got water. And like I said, water is a fickle thing that it's anti-gravity. Your home is a sponge. It soaks it up. It can get all the way up to the ceiling. In commercial properties, we've seen it climb as high as like 3 stories in a building, if you can believe that, inside the drywall. And again, it does not discriminate. All
right. Sounds good, Mike. Well, thank you, Mike, for being on.
Absolutely.
And thank you, everyone, for your patience while I got through this exciting, fun time. Sarcastically. No, it's all good, though. And that's the other thing I was going to say, and you can vouch for this, I'm sure, Mike, that, with over there at Blanchard, make sure you have the proper policy coverage, like Mike said before in this podcast and many times on the show, because I have the proper coverage that I'm able to get the 50% of the house that's damaged will be in the next couple of weeks, start the renovation process back to normal.
And it's also having the right carrier. I know there's a lot of new carriers in the space. I know there's a lot of national brands coming into the state of Florida. I mean, you have a company that's like, a Florida-based domestic company. I don't like mention, carrier names on here, but when you have a Florida-based domestic carrier who's been in Florida doing business over 10 years, they have seen all this. They have done all this. They have the partners. You got to be skeptical of insurance companies that are, number one, new in business and new to Florida, because a lot of the time they don't know how to handle this. And some of those companies I could have seen coming back to Nick and saying, well, guess what? You just bought this house. It was probably from the previous owner. It's previous existing damage. We're not going to cover it. Nick, you're high and dry. See you later. That happens more than people think. So when you're vetting an insurance company, I always go back to my rule of standards. And, my rule of thumb here is make sure the company's been in Florida operating for at least 10 years. you're better off with a Florida regional company as opposed to somebody who's a huge conglomerate, has new to Florida, or they're a startup company. And it's easy to find those things out. You can ask an insurance agent. You can go online and do your research because, again, you want somebody who's tried and true. Because I could see, like in Nick's case, there are some insurance companies out there, unfortunately, that they could have tried to use the argument that, hey, it's a newer home that you just bought. It's pre-existing damage. It's a slow leak that should have been detected. Therefore, you're on your own, Nick. So I'm glad, you have the right insurance, you have the right coverage, and that's the most important thing at the end of the day.
Awesome. Couldn't agree more. All right, Mike. Well, everyone, thank you. And Mike, thank you again for being on today. We'll see you guys next week on Friday, and have a good weekend, everyone. All right. Take care.
Thanks,
Mike.
guys. Bye-bye.
This has been Home to All, an all-inclusive real estate podcast. Find Nick on Facebook and Instagram at downtown.expert, and also his website, www.downtown.expert, or call or text him at 407-508-8809. Thanks for listening.
No one knows what the future holds, but if a new house is in your future, I can help from a safe distance. I'm Nick Acosta, your downtown expert, and I'm hosting safe and sanitary open houses. Nothing is different except for temperature checks at the door and masks are required. But it still smells like there are fresh baked cookies in the oven. So come on by one of my safe and sanitary open houses, and I'll say welcome home from 6 feet away.